There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's positive or negative.
The Yankees have swept the Twins.
Minnesota Sports Chat has you covered. Talking nothing but Minnesota sports all year long. It's time now for the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in his own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat with your host, Ross Brendel.
Hey, that would be me. Welcome inside edition number 226 of the soon-to-be award-winning Minnesota Sports Chat. Award-winning, if only in my own mind, presented by Beans Coffee Company. It is the Gophers Review and Preview edition with Daniel House from Gophers Guru and mere moments. If you're watching on the YouTube machine, you can already see him on the screen. Those of you listening via podcast form, you'll have to wait just a few moments for his melodious tones. North Carolina ekes out a victory over the Gophers, and now the mighty Rhode Island Rams await on Saturday morning at Huntington Bank Stadium for the Gophers. We'll talk about the Tar Heels and the Rams in just moments. Sources close to my seat in Section 235, Daniel House, can confirm Gophers offense looked a little sluggish on Thursday night. I almost said Thursday might. They did not have enough might on Thursday night. They may want to give my friends at Beans Coffee Company a try with the blend and roast for any palate. Beans Coffee Company, they can help get you going, or maybe even help get the favorite football team in your life going too. Beans Coffee Company ships for free on all orders of $35 or more. I personally recommend that Profecta's blend. The Mikado's great too. They're all great. Those two just happen to be my personal favorites. Check out all the blends and find your new favorite at coffeebybeans.com. That's coffeebybeans.com, and use the promo code SPORTSCHAT. That's SPORTSCHAT at coffeebybeans.com to save on checkout or at checkout. We're off to a rousing start this edition with the English language on this edition of Minnesota Sports Chat.
From 47. On the way, it is no good. North Carolina survives.
Yeah, that they did. Dragan Kesic misses a potential game-winning, actually would have been a game-winning field goal attempt at TCF Bank Stadium. Boy, I did it. Huntington Bank Stadium. That's going to take years to get over, and it's already been, what, Daniel? 2 years? Is this year 3 already?
I think it's year 3, yeah.
This is year 3, and I still let that slip on occasion. Gophers fall in game 1 by a final score of 19-17 to North Carolina. In all honesty, the difference was field goal kickers. One field goal kicker made all 4. The Gophers missed 2 field goals, one just wide right and one off the upright. That ends up being the difference in a game between two teams, Daniel, in week 1. I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure what I watched from either team offensively in week 1. It just was not a very aesthetically pleasing or beautiful football game, but a game that was there for the taking for the Gophers, and a game that they did not win. And in a year, Daniel, where I think they're going to be living on the margins, and as I said about this time last week, be a team that's going to float right around 6 wins. I feel like at the end of the year, that could easily be a game that the Gophers may end up wanting back. Overall, Daniel, I'm not too disappointed because I didn't necessarily think the Gophers were going to win that game. But where I am disappointed is the game was there for the taking. They could have easily won by double digits, and they lost. To me, the opening game this year looked an awful lot like pretty much every loss last season, and that is the disappointing part.
Well, there's just a lot of missed opportunities, execution, fundamental stuff, couple holding penalties. The one was big because you had a strip sack fumble recovery that would have had you deep in North Carolina territory. You got that hands to the face penalty as well. And then the big one, the loss, like almost 45% of win probability on the holding penalty late on the last drive there. I mean, geez, you think about if you're able to be down at like the 18-yard line, how different that scenario is. You can run the ball a couple more times, get it closer. But that penalty just zapped everything. You could feel the vibe of the team shift when that penalty occurred. And so I just thought that it wasn't a very clean performance. It was uncharacteristic from Fleck coach teams, the penalties, the mistakes that were made. I think the team's adjusting to playing a little bit more man coverage technique. So there's a little bit more holding in the secondary going on. I think that offensively, they struggled really, really a ton up front. I mean, the Jeff Collins' scheme sending pressure from everywhere. We talked about that last week, how big that was going to be with communication and pre and post snap identification. And I mean, he brought some of the things that he did in the past to the game, but also built off of some stuff you're seeing in the NFL. You know, showing pressure presentation, dropping out into Tampa 2, cover 2, basically sending simulated pressures. So showing pressure, dropping a defender in exchange for another, stunting, shifting alignments, like all this stuff that created identification issues in Minnesota. You know, they had some things there, I think, conceptually, but just couldn't execute because I thought the pass protection was pretty poor up front.
Yeah, and I think that is directly shown in a lot of Max Brosmer's early numbers in the game where at halftime, the Gophers, I believe, had less than 50 yards passing. Well, I'll try and defend the quarterback a little bit. It's tough to look downfield and go through your progressions when you can barely set your plant foot before you're either running for your life or you're on, politely, you're on your backside. I think it's really tough to do those things. You mentioned the missed opportunities, Daniel. Early on, you have a potential pick six. I don't want to say it was dropped, but that feels like, that's a play that if it's made, probably turns the game around right there. That's dropped at about the 13-yard line. You have the fumble recovery that's called back because of a penalty. You have 2 missed field goals. And you mentioned 2 holding calls, I believe, off the top of my head.
Yeah, and then you had the 2 illegal
down
formations on special teams, too.
Yeah, great start on special teams. Also something that has ailed the Gophers in recent years. Let's talk about Max Brosmer just a little bit here in week 1 against North Carolina. Definitely stepping up in competition from by and large what he's used to seeing on a week in and week out basis. I don't know if you can formulate too many opinions, Daniel, based off of some of the stuff that we said in the early stretch. My early takeaways, though, from game 1 from section 235, the game looked to be moving a little bit fast for him, but some of that could easily be because of the protection or lack thereof up front. I also thought he missed a few throws that you just can't miss when you're playing teams like that of receivers that are open. Now, on the bright side, I think looking ahead a little bit, Daniel, he'll get a couple weeks where hopefully you build some confidence. You can hopefully get a couple of nice wins before you go into that tougher part of the schedule. But your thoughts on Brosmer, who goes 13 for 21, 165 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He did have a crucial fumble lost. By and large, Daniel, I mean, I think the word that comes to mind for me is meh. I mean, I don't mean that to be negative, but it was just a very pedestrian-like normal performance. And in all honesty, something we've seen for the last couple of years from Gopher quarterbacks. So I think hopefully as the season progresses, we get more than that. I'm also not going to bury him after one game.
Yeah, I've said it in the past, looking at the season in thirds. By the time you get through the 4th game, you know what you have as a team. You get a feel for personnel, where you're at, where the opponents are at. Everything starts to become more clear after the 4th game. So, I do believe that you got to kind of look at what you saw and, look ahead to future games and kind of see how it goes. Is this the trend, or is this an outlier? Like, what is it? I thought early in the game, a little bit, you could feel a little bit skittish, maybe the nerves flowing a little bit. You got that in cut to Gears that he missed, that 3rd and 9 speed cut to Christian Driver early in the second half there, right after that 17 play over 8-minute drive. You went 3 and out. I thought that was the turning point in the game. I mean, honestly, nobody's talking about it. I mean, the offense only ran 4 plays in the 3rd quarter. I mean, they got 27-4 play disparity in the 3rd quarter. The offense didn't have many snaps. And I thought that Brosmer, based on what they were doing in early downs, especially in the second half, they were behind the sticks. They were in spots where the pass rush could take over. They put their exotics in, and then you got pressure all over the place. Like, they couldn't run the ball as well. North Carolina just had a really good scheme. And I thought at the end of the game, when they started putting in some tempo, getting it moving a little bit, he found a little bit of a rhythm in that quick passing, pushing the ball downfield a little bit. But I also think, like, some screen passes, getting that going, maybe as aggressive as that rush was. I thought maybe a couple of those would have been effective to try to slow that pass rush down a little bit out quickly getting upfield. But they had a lot of free runners coming in there. I mean, that made it hard. I noted several throws where Brosmer, was looking like he was going to the right spot, getting ready to throw the ball, but you just, the pressure altered the throw a little bit. And then there was just a couple of misses. I mean, like you say, I think it's just going to come down to, let's see what happens over the next few games here.
Do you think that tempo is something we'll see more of going forward? Is that something they maybe introduce into the Rhode Island game and try and use a little bit more to get him comfortable? Or do you think the Rhode Island game is back to kind of what we saw at the beginning of the North Carolina game and what this Gopher offense has always been? Sure, we're going to pass and try and have some bigger chunk plays, but we're still going to try and dominate the game at the line of scrimmage and run the ball. I guess what I'm getting at is, what are we going to see against Rhode Island? The Gophers, I expect to win. They should win. They should win comfortably, but there's a reason why you play the game. You never know that for sure. I guess what I'm most interested in is, can you win comfortably like I think you should? And how are you going to do it? Are you going to do it the way you traditionally have since PJ Fleck has been here? Or are you maybe going to win comfortably by trying to air it out a little bit more? Because I will say now, Daniel, I think, was it last year, all year, the bowl game, and now this year, you're looking at 14 plus games that the team hasn't had a 40-yard pass completion. I mean, in today's day and age, that's pretty incredible. And I will say this, for as much as I do like PJ, that's also tough to defend no matter who you're trotting out there at quarterback.
Yeah, I just look at this game stylistically. Running the ball seems like it will be the formula based on what they've done in the past and how they approach the games, looking at what they could maybe do to expose some weaknesses. I actually think offensively, Rhode Island presents a few challenges. They got a real mobile quarterback in Farrell. He can run around in the design QB game. They got three backs that I think are pretty good. They rotate. Malik Grant really can break tackles. He's an elusive back. I think it was a good portal ad. Marquise Buchanan, top playmaker, someone that you got to account for over the middle of the field and in space. He breaks a lot of tackles, creates a lot of yards after the catch. They got several different weapons that they like to get the ball to in space, and a nice RPO game. Defensively, you're going to see a mix of different fronts. I actually like number 99, defensive tackle. I think he's pretty good. He gets underneath guys, uses his hands well. AJ Pena is kind of the big playmaker for them on the defensive side of the ball, edge rusher that came back. I expect them to be pretty aggressive, rolling safeties down versus the run and then blitzing a little bit. They like to send their DBs, corners, safeties, get them involved in the pressure packages. And then I also think that you're going to see them kind of do some things with their front and pressure packages that North Carolina deployed, and they're going to test to see if Minnesota can communicate and handle those things. So that's kind of a quick overview of Rhode Island, and I'll have a deeper preview of what they look like on the site.
And that site is gophersguru.com. Daniel House joining for the weekly Gopher football preview and review edition, or maybe it's review and preview. I don't know if we've ever really decided which order that should go in. Daniel, here's your weekly update for whatever it's worth. According to the ESPN matchup predictor, the Gophers have a 97.2% chance at winning this football game for whatever that's worth. I didn't see a line. I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't been able to find a line yet. I've been looking for it online, and I have not found it anywhere yet. Tried several sports books, and I don't see it out yet.
There may not be one, which generally sometimes they don't set lines, but typically in a game like this, I wouldn't think that they believe Minnesota is 50 plus points better than Rhode Island. So who knows about that? Can I bring up a couple more negatives before I get to a positive from the game last Thursday night? So the negatives, and I guess I don't even know how much you can even call them negatives anymore. I think at some point it is a negative, but also it just is what it is. 2 timeouts burned before a few minutes left in the first quarter just continues to bug me. Sometimes you're going to need those timeouts late in the half. First half, you're not always going to need them. But that bugs me. They had 2 timeouts gone by, I think, 3 minutes left in the first quarter. And then we haven't talked about it a ton, and the coach addressed it in the post game, but I just really don't like getting first and goal from the 9.5 and running 3. Now, if you score a touchdown, whatever. We're not bringing this up. But from first and goal at the 9.5, you run one quick pass to a running back who gets tackled right away, or maybe the pass was even dropped, and then you hand the ball off twice in a row. I just really don't like that, especially when I've heard all season about we're going to be a bit more intentional about this offense being different. Now, again, I will say what I just said. If the Gophers score a touchdown by handing it off on 3rd and 9, I'm not saying anything about that. But I just, removed from the game, Daniel, I just didn't see anything different about that game and that result than anything that I saw last year in what was a down year for the program. So my negative, Daniel House, is when I said best case scenario, they win 7 games, but it might be more of a 5-6 win team. After the North Carolina game, I'm starting to believe it's closer to 4 or 5 wins based off of what I saw. Now, I will say there's meat on the bone, but again, you're going to be living on the margins. You're going to have to do everything well in 5 or 6 of those games to get to your 6 or 7 wins. So my negative is I don't like the timeouts being burned in the first quarter. And I just really don't like much about anything that happened on that first and goal where the Gophers settled for what turned out to be a missed field goal attempt, especially when your only pass play, Daniel, doesn't go into the end zone. I just didn't like anything about that.
I look back at that sequence in the low red zone that you're referencing, and I actually put it in the breakdown. That play design on first and goal should have been a touchdown. And the timing of the play was just not quite where it needed to be spacing wise. You watch right as that mesh concept is being run where the receivers cross paths, there's just this slight step upfield that throws the timing off, and the ball gives the defense enough time to knock it down. And if that ball is able to get off, Spencer's walking to the end zone for a touchdown. The third and goal play call with that little misdirection play, just block execution. You get a tackle getting cross face by the defender, and then it's just poorly executed. And then I think, like you say, taking a shot in the end zone probably makes sense there in that scenario. However, the play design was not executed that they did run on 3rd and goal. And I think throwing into the end zone, there's a play, especially if you want to be aggressive and try to get some points. I mean, you still, even if it's incomplete, you're able to kick a field goal.
That analysis, especially when Daniel doesn't hop in and yell at me because I got the first pass play wrong. You're right. The first pass play in that sequence was to Spencer, and I think it was even slightly behind him too. But that analysis and much more is available at gophersguru.com. The positive, Daniel, not to be all negative, if this team is going to win 6 or 7 games still, I thought the defense looked fine. I mean, I'm not convinced North Carolina is going to be very good. I think they're now probably going to be worse without Max Johnson the rest of the year. But again, that'll bear itself out throughout the season. But I thought the defense held up really well, especially with how much they were being asked to be put on the field. And to your point, they give up a long touchdown drive. The offense comes out, has a 3-and-out, and they punt the ball back to North Carolina. I thought the defense held up really well, and I think they held up well in pass coverage. I think tackling could be a lot better. I mean, the touchdown drive that North Carolina had at the beginning of the game with Max Johnson just being super shifty and making guys miss, that's a little annoying. But by and large, I thought the defense was pretty good. So I do think that is one positive to take away from the opening week loss.
I thought the pressure schemes were very solid, stuff that they timed up, and then it was just execution. Like you got the holding penalty on the one pressure that you sent that led to a strip sack fumble. They put in some pressure stuff that I thought was effective, but again, it was just little execution details. You mentioned tackling. I thought for the most part, assignment sound from a schematic standpoint, people being in the right spot, just not executing. Hampton's a tough back to bring down, but tackling fundamentals definitely got to get cleaned up. I didn't think the block deconstruction was as good in the second level, especially up front too. Got to do a better job of using your hands up front to get off of blocks and extend and shed to basically defend the run better. I didn't think that they played with as good a block deconstruction fundamentals. I think that, people are talking about tackling. I think that was a big deal, but going back through the game, I just didn't think the block deconstruction was as good. And I think that's something that's crucial that needs to be emphasized.
Texas and Michigan this weekend. Who do you got?
I like Michigan's defense a lot. I think that schematically and personnel-wise, they're going to create some challenges. And I think that that's going to be the difference in the game. It's at Michigan. I think that Michigan's going to end up winning the game.
Better erector set stadium, Hawaii or Northwestern?
I like Northwestern. So that was pretty sweet watching that game.
It was
cool.
Beautiful.
Honestly, I liked it better than their previous setup. Like, they could just do that full time. It looks sweet.
That's been the joke on the interwebs, that they should just stay there.
Well, I mean, hey, it doesn't look bad.
So we've talked about this, I think, in previous years on this pod. The minimum the NCAA will allow is 12,000 seats. So Hawaii literally lists their erector set stadium at 12,000. And I still don't know if they're ever going to get a new stadium. I thought the plan was for them to get one, but at last check, there's nothing set in place. So they're going to be playing at whatever it's called for at least a handful more years. And I know Northwestern has one in place that I think will be ready. It's not next year. Is it 2026 or 2027?
I think it's 2027. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's multiple years here in this setup for a while, but I liked it. It looked cool.
I just get such a kick out of they're getting a new stadium. They're going to have a new one, but yet the NCAA mandates, hey, even in your temporary home, you got to have X amount of seats. I like Hawaii's. I think Hawaii's just looks beautiful when they show some of the overhead pictures. And Hawaii, by the way, battled Big Ten rich program UCLA very well this past weekend.
Hawaii's improved. Timmy Chang's doing a good job down there.
I think Timmy Chang's going to go bowling this year, House. I think he's going to.
That was a fun game to watch, actually. I thought UCLA's defense played quite well. That was the X factor because Garbers was shaky early in the game and started to find footing in the second half. It made a couple big plays downfield, but UCLA's defense looks good.
That's all I got for you, buddy. Next week, we will preview, hopefully review a Gophers victory, win number 1 of the year, and preview, I mean, maybe not the world's most interesting non-conference opponent, but certainly a step up from Rhode Island and a team that has a bit of a past. Colin Kaepernick rolled through Nevada. They've been to bowl games, so at least we'll be able to review. Hopefully, I don't want to eat my words on this, but hopefully a bit more of a serious opponent next week. What else is at gophersguru.com?
Well, next week you get to hear me man crush Jeff Choate, one of my guys. I like him. He's a very good coach. So stay tuned next week for that. Review of the game on the website, 2 parts. You can check it out, offense and defense. And then Rhode Island preview coming at the end of the week with everything you need to know.
Love it. That is at Daniel House MN on the X Machine, also at gophersguru.com. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
I am at the Ross Brendel on the X Machine. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please remember to rate and review. If you're listening on YouTube, why don't you tell me, how much will the Gophers win by? I'm going to go with 32. They're going to win by 32 on Saturday against Rhode Island. And please remember to subscribe on YouTube as well. Tell your family and friends all about Minnesota Sports Chat. I'm back later on in this very feed.
Thanks for listening to Minnesota Sports Chat, presented by Beans Coffee Company. Use the promo code SPORTSCHAT. That's one word, Sports Chat, to save at checkout. Follow Ross on X at the Ross Brendel. Like and subscribe to Minnesota Sports Chat wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review kindly.